Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the human ship Harmony, watching the massive Zorathian vessel approach. It was beautiful in a way that took her breath away. The ship was twice the size of anything humans had ever built, its hull gleaming like polished silver against the stars. Strange symbols glowed along its surface, pulsing with soft blue light. "They're really coming to meet us," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, standing beside her. His voice carried wonder and a hint of fear. After 3 years of sending radio messages into space, humanity was finally getting an answer. The Zorathian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Their message to Earth had been simple. "Young species of the third planet, we welcome you to the community of worlds. Prepare for contact." Sarah touched the small picture in her pocket, her daughter Emma, smiling in her school uniform back on Earth. Emma was only 12, but she was already studying the Zorathian language. Like many human children, she dreamed of seeing alien worlds and making friends among the stars. The airlock hissed open, and the first aliens humans had ever seen walked onto their ship. The Zorathians were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved with grace, their long robes flowing behind them. The leader stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Kelthrin of the Zorathian Empire. We greet you, people of Earth." Sarah bowed slightly as their briefings had suggested. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing humanity. We are honored to meet you." Kelthrin's face remained calm, but Sarah thought she saw something like approval in those dark eyes. "Your species shows promise. You have achieved faster-than-light travel in record time. The Empire is impressed." The negotiations that followed were better than humanity's wildest dreams. The Zorathians offered technology, knowledge, and most importantly, worlds where humans could build new homes. They spoke of a galaxy where hundreds of species lived in peace under the Empire's guidance. "The Empire maintains order," Kelthrin explained during one of their meetings. "We have learned that chaos leads only to suffering. Species that join us willingly find prosperity and safety." Dr. Webb leaned forward eagerly. "What about species that don't join willingly?" For just a moment, Kelthrin's expression grew cold. "Such species are rare. Most learn to appreciate the benefits of order once they experience them." Within 6 months, the first human colony ships were launching toward the stars. The Empire had given them 3 worlds to settle: New Terra, Haven, and Prosperity. Each world was beautiful, with clean air and fertile soil. The Zorathians helped humans build their first alien cities, teaching them to work with local plants and animals. Emma had begged to come on the colony ships, but Sarah insisted she finish her education on Earth first. "There will be time for adventures later, sweetheart," Sarah had told her. "Let us make sure these new worlds are safe." But as reports came back from the colonies, it seemed there was nothing to worry about. Human families sent pictures of their children playing in alien gardens under purple skies. Scientists worked alongside Zorathian researchers, learning about technologies that seemed like magic. Farmers grew crops that could feed twice as many people as Earth's plants. The colony on New Terra became especially successful. Governor James Park sent regular reports of human families settling into their new lives. Children born on New Terra were the first humans to grow up under alien stars. The Zorathians seemed delighted by human children, often watching them play with expressions that might have been smiles. Sarah visited New Terra 6 months after the first colonists arrived. The settlement was thriving. Human buildings stood alongside Zorathian structures, creating a unique blend of architectural styles. Children ran through the streets, some human, some alien, playing games together despite their differences. "Look at them," Governor Park said, watching a group of children chase each other through a park. "In 1 generation, they'll grow up thinking this is normal. Humans and aliens living together, working together." Sarah's daughter Emma had finally been allowed to visit for the summer. She attended the integrated school where human and Zorathian children learned together. Emma came home each day full of stories about her alien friends and the amazing things they were teaching her. "Mom, did you know the Zorathians can see colors we can't even imagine?" Emma said one evening as they walked through the settlement. "And their music, it's like nothing on Earth. It makes your heart feel like it's flying." But not everything was perfect. Some human colonists complained that the Zorathians were too controlling. They had rules about where humans could build, what crops they could grow, even how many children families could have. "It's for the greater good," Ambassador Kelthrin explained when Sarah brought up these concerns. "The Empire has learned through centuries of experience. These guidelines prevent problems before they start. Dr. Webb, who had moved to New Terra to study alien technology, was less satisfied with these explanations. He came to Sarah's quarters one evening looking troubled. "I've been analyzing their technology," he said quietly. "It's incredible, yes, but there's something strange about it. Everything is designed for control. Their computers monitor everything their citizens do. Their weapons are built to disable rather than destroy, perfect for controlling populations." Sarah frowned. "Maybe that's just their way. They've kept peace in the galaxy for 2,000 years. Have they?" Webb asked. "Or have they just silenced anyone who might disturb that peace?" Sarah didn't want to think about such dark possibilities. The Zorathians had been nothing but helpful. They had given humanity a chance at the stars, something that might have taken centuries to achieve alone. The first signs of trouble came from the outer colonies. Reports arrived of Zorathian ships scanning human settlements, taking detailed records of population numbers and military capabilities. When Governor Park asked about these activities, he was told they were routine security measures. Then came the restrictions. Humans could no longer travel freely between worlds without Zorathian approval. Certain technologies were declared inappropriate for human use. Messages between Earth and the colonies began taking longer to arrive, as if they were being examined before delivery. Emma noticed the changes too. "Some of my Zorathian friends seem sad lately," she told Sarah. "When I ask them why, they just say things are becoming difficult and change the subject." Sarah tried to discuss these concerns with Ambassador Kelthrin, but he dismissed them easily. "Growing pains," he said with what she was learning to recognize as his diplomatic smile. "All new species experience some adjustment difficulties. You will adapt." The word adapt sent a chill down Sarah's spine. It sounded less like a prediction and more like a command. Dr. Webb's research had uncovered more disturbing information. In the Empire's historical records, he found mentions of dozens of species that had failed to adapt successfully. These species were listed as relocated or integrated into the greater community. None of their homeworlds showed any signs of current habitation. "Sarah," Webb said during their last private conversation on New Terra, "I think we need to prepare for the possibility that the Empire's definition of peace might not match ours." But it was too late for preparations. As Sarah stood in the observation deck of the transport ship taking her back to Earth, she watched New Terra growing smaller behind them. Emma pressed her face against the window, waving goodbye to the friends she had made. "Will we come back soon?" Emma asked. Sarah hugged her daughter close, trying to shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." 3 weeks later, back on Earth, Sarah received the last transmission from New Terra. Governor Park's face filled the screen, but his usual calm expression was replaced by fear. "Sarah, something's wrong. Zorathian ships are surrounding all our colonies. They're not responding to our communications. The ships are powering up weapon systems we've never seen before." The transmission cut to static. Every attempt to re-establish contact failed. For 12 hours, Earth tried desperately to reach their colonies among the stars. Then the final message arrived. Ambassador Kelthrin's face appeared on every screen on Earth, his diplomatic smile replaced by cold indifference. "People of Earth," he said, "your colonies have been terminated. Your species has proven incompatible with galactic order. Consider this a lesson in the price of chaos." The screen went dark, leaving billions of humans staring at their reflections in black monitors, trying to understand that their children, their friends, their dreams of the future had just been murdered by the very aliens who had promised them the stars. Sarah Chen stared at the blank screen for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Around her, the emergency command center erupted into chaos. Officers shouted orders. Technicians frantically worked at their stations, and somewhere in the background she could hear someone crying. But Sarah heard none of it. In her mind, she kept seeing Emma's face pressed against the transport window, waving goodbye to New Terra. Emma, who would never come home. Emma, who was dead. "Captain Chen." General Morrison's voice cut through her shock. "We need you focused. Earth Defense Network is showing massive energy signatures incoming." Sarah forced herself to look at the tactical display. Red dots filled the screen. Dozens of Zorathian ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They were huge, far larger than the diplomatic vessels humanity had seen before. These were warships. How long until they reach Earth? Sarah asked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. 18 hours at their current speed, replied Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. But Captain, they're not just coming here. We're getting reports from our deep space monitoring stations. The Zorathians are hitting everything. Mars colony, the Jupiter mining platforms, even the research station on Titan. The attacks were coordinated and brutal. Humanity's small defensive fleet, designed more for asteroid deflection than warfare, was swept aside like toys. The Zorathians used weapons that turned ships into expanding clouds of vapor in seconds. There was no warning, no chance to surrender, no mercy. On the main screen, Admiral Hayes appeared from Luna Base, his face grim. All outer system installations are gone. We've lost contact with over 50,000 people in the last 3 hours. The enemy fleet is splitting up. Most ships heading for Earth, but smaller groups are hunting down our scattered vessels. Sarah watched the tactical display update in real time. Every red dot represented death, and there were so many of them. The Zorathians weren't just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying every human presence beyond Earth's atmosphere. Dr. Webb stumbled into the command center, his usually neat appearance disheveled. He had been working without sleep since the first reports came in, trying to understand what was happening. I've been analyzing their attack pattern, he said, his voice hoarse. This isn't a conquest. They're trying to exterminate us. Every strike is designed to cause maximum casualties with minimum warning. Why? Sarah found herself asking. We did everything they asked. We followed their rules, accepted their restrictions. Webb's face was haunted. I found something in their historical databases before the communications were cut. This has happened before, Sarah. Dozens of times. Species that showed too much independence, too much creativity, too much chaos. The Empire calls it population control measures. The hours that followed were the longest in human history. Earth's few defensive satellites tried to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the Zorathian shields. The alien ships took position around the planet like predators surrounding wounded prey. Then came the broadcast. Every screen on Earth lit up with the image of a Zorathian military commander, his ceremonial armor gleaming under harsh lights. Behind him, human prisoners knelt in rows, colonists from New Terra and the other worlds. People of Earth, the commander spoke in perfect English. I am War Leader Vorthak of the Imperial Fleet. Your species has been judged unfit for integration into galactic society. Your chaotic nature and unpredictable growth patterns pose a threat to the established order. Sarah's heart stopped as she recognized faces among the prisoners. Governor Park was there, bleeding from a head wound. Dr. Martinez from the Agricultural Project. And in the front row, barely visible but unmistakably present, children. Human children who had been playing in alien gardens just days ago. To ensure galactic stability, Vorthak continued, all human colonies have been terminated. These final representatives of your colonial efforts will serve as an example to other species who might consider defying imperial authority. What happened next would haunt the survivors forever. The Zorathians didn't simply execute their prisoners. They made it into a spectacle, broadcasting every moment to Earth. Children cried for parents who would never come. Adults faced death with whatever dignity they could manage, some shouting messages of love to families they would never see again. Sarah watched Emma's teacher from the integrated school die trying to protect her students. She watched Governor Park refuse to beg for his life, even as alien weapons powered up around him. She watched children who had dreamed of the stars become symbols of humanity's failure to understand the true nature of the galaxy. The massacre lasted for hours. The Zorathians were methodical, killing groups of prisoners one by one while describing their crimes against galactic order. Unauthorized expansion. Failure to conform to population controls. Demonstration of chaotic behavioral patterns. When it was over, Vorthak looked directly into the camera. Let this be a lesson to any species that believes they can ignore imperial law. The galaxy belongs to those who understand the value of order. Chaos will not be tolerated. But the Zorathians weren't finished. Their ships began bombarding Earth's major cities from orbit. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Ancient centers of human civilization disappeared under alien fire. Billions died in the first few hours, their only crime being born into a species that had dared to reach for the stars. Sarah found herself in an underground bunker beneath what used to be Geneva, along with the few hundred survivors of Earth's government and military. The surface world was burning, and the air itself had become poison from the alien weapons. "Why aren't they finishing us?" asked General Morrison, staring at reports from the few sensors still functioning. "They could crack the planet open if they wanted to." Dr. Webb looked up from a computer terminal, his eyes red with exhaustion and grief. "Because they want witnesses. They want some humans to survive, so we can tell other species what happens when you displease the Empire. We're not just victims, we're a warning." Sarah thought about Emma, about all the children who had died for the crime of dreaming. She thought about the human families who had trusted the Zarathians, who had believed in a better future among the stars. She thought about the colonies that had been building something beautiful and new, until alien warships turned them into graves. The attacks continued for 3 days. When they finally stopped, Earth was a broken world. Most of its cities were ruins, its atmosphere poisoned. Its population reduced from 8 billion to less than 1 billion survivors scattered across underground shelters and remote installations. On the 4th day, the Zarathian fleet departed without explanation. They left behind a dead world and a broken species, satisfied that the lesson had been taught. As their ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, they transmitted a final message to Earth. "Your species has been reduced to acceptable levels. Any attempt to expand beyond your home system will result in complete extinction. The Empire is merciful. We grant you life as long as you remember your place." In the bunker, Sarah sat in darkness for hours after the alien ships were gone. Around her, the survivors began the impossible task of planning how to rebuild from almost nothing. They talked about medical supplies, food distribution, radiation cleanup, but Sarah wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about Emma's smile, about the children in the integrated school, about Governor Park's last words before the aliens killed him. "Tell Earth we died free." Dr. Webb found her there as the artificial lights dimmed for what passed as night in their underground world. He sat beside her in silence for a long time before speaking. "They made a mistake," he said quietly. Sarah looked at him with hollow eyes. "What mistake? They won. They killed our children and broke our world." Webb's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried something that hadn't been there before, something cold and hard and dangerous. "They left some of us alive. They think they taught us a lesson about order and chaos, but they don't understand what they really did." "What did they do?" Webb turned to face her, and Sarah saw something in his expression that made her shiver. It was the look of a man who had lost everything that made him human and found something else in its place. "They showed us what we're really capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized." 1 year after the massacre, the Zarathian Empire had forgotten about humanity. War leader Vorthak filed his final report on the human incident and moved on to other duties. The Empire's vast bureaucracy processed the event as just another successful population adjustment. In the grand halls of Zarathia Prime, diplomats from hundreds of worlds continued their business, secure in the knowledge that order had been maintained. They had no way of knowing that deep beneath Earth's scarred surface, something terrible was being born. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in what had once been the Large Hadron Collider, now converted into something far more sinister. The underground facility stretched for miles, filled with laboratories where human survivors worked with desperate purpose. The air hummed with energy from machines that bent the laws of physics in ways the Zorathians had never imagined. "Show me the test results," Webb said to Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the few quantum physicists to survive the bombardment. Kim pulled up holographic displays showing impossible geometries and equations that hurt to look at directly. "The fear resonance generators are working perfectly. We can now trigger panic responses in Zarathian neural patterns from over 50 light-years away. The subjects experience every terror they've ever known simultaneously." Webb nodded without emotion. Before the massacre, he had been a pacifist who refused to work on military projects. Now he spent every waking hour designing weapons that would make the Zarathians wish they had never learned to fear. "What about the memory extractors?" "Even better." Kim's voice carried a satisfaction that would have horrified her former self. "We can pull specific memories from their minds and force them to relive their worst moments over and over. A Zorathian exposed to our memory bombs will experience centuries of psychological torture in just minutes." In another section of the facility, Captain Sarah Chen worked with the survivors of Earth's military forces. The command center looked nothing like the clean, organized spaces of the old Earth Defense Network. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing star charts marked with red targets. The air smelled of ozone and determination. "How many ships do we have ready?" Sarah asked Colonel Martinez, one of the few high-ranking officers to survive. 37 stealth vessels, each equipped with the new quantum drives, Martinez replied. "They're invisible to Zorathian sensors and can reach faster than light speeds that would tear apart conventional ships. We've also completed the conversion of the asteroid mining platforms into weapons." Sarah studied the tactical display. Each red dot represented a Zorathian installation that would pay for what happened to Emma and the other children. The Empire had thousands of worlds, but humanity only needed to hit the right targets to send their message. "What about the Psychological Warfare Division?" Martinez's expression grew dark. "Dr. Chen's team has created something they call nightmare viruses. Computer programs that can infiltrate Zorathian networks and change their entertainment, their news, even their children's stories into sources of pure terror. Imagine every screen in your home showing your deepest fears, and you can't turn them off." The other Dr. Chen, no relation to Sarah despite sharing a name, had been a specialist in alien psychology before the war. Now she studied Zorathian minds like a predator learning the weaknesses of prey. The survivors had spent the year well. While the Empire celebrated its victory, humanity had transformed itself into something the galaxy had never seen. They had taken every lesson the Zorathians taught them about order and control and turned it into weapons of pure chaos. The first strike came without warning, just as the Zorathians had attacked Earth. Research Station Kelmar 7 had been operating in the outer spiral for over 300 years. Its 10,000 Zorathian scientists studied exotic matter in the safety of deep space, far from any inhabited worlds. They considered their work routine, important but not dangerous. The station's sensors never detected the human ship that materialized just outside their shields. The vessel looked nothing like the crude Earth ships the Empire remembered. This was something new, built with technology that shouldn't have existed. The first thing the Zorathians noticed was the silence. Their quantum computers, which had run continuously for centuries, simply stopped working. Emergency systems failed to activate. Communication arrays went dark. In the space of heartbeats, the most advanced research station in the Empire became as helpless as a wooden boat in a storm. Then the nightmares began. Dr. Velthan, the station's chief researcher, was reviewing data when his computer screen flickered. Instead of scientific readings, he saw images of his childhood home burning. He heard his mother screaming his name as she died in flames that had consumed his world 200 years ago. Flames that existed only in his memory until now. All around the station, similar scenes played out. Every Zorathian scientist found themselves reliving their worst memories, amplified and twisted into forms their minds couldn't handle. The lucky ones went insane quickly. The others experienced days of psychological torture in the space of minutes. But the humans weren't finished. As the Zorathians collapsed under the assault on their minds, figures in dark armor materialized throughout the station. They moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will, their faces hidden behind masks that reflected each viewer's deepest fears. The human soldiers didn't simply kill the station's crew. They made each death a work of art, a message written in blood and terror. Some Zorathians were found days later by rescue teams, still alive but broken, whispering the same words over and over. "The humans are coming. The humans are coming." When Imperial forces finally reached Research Station Kelmar 7, they found something that would haunt the Empire's nightmares for generations. The station was intact, its equipment undamaged, but every living thing aboard was dead or insane. Written across the walls in the Zorathian language were messages that made no tactical sense, but conveyed their meaning perfectly. "You murdered our children. This is for Emma and all the others. We remember New Terra." Admiral Cortex of the Imperial Fleet studied the reports with growing unease. He had overseen the human extermination personally, had watched their primitive ships burn like candles in the void. This couldn't be the same species. How many humans were aboard the attacking vessel? He asked his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir. Our best estimates suggest no more than 20, possibly fewer. The psychological weapons make accurate assessment difficult. 20 humans had destroyed a station with 10,000 defenders. The numbers made no sense according to everything the Empire knew about warfare. What do we know about their technology? The intelligence officer's report made Corthex's blood run cold. The humans had somehow developed weapons that attacked the mind itself, ships that could appear anywhere without warning, and soldiers who seemed immune to conventional weapons. Sir, the officer continued, there's something else. We've detected similar attacks on installations throughout the outer spiral. The humans aren't targeting random locations. They're specifically hitting research, stations, and military bases that participated in the Earth bombardment. Corthex realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just fighting back. They were hunting down everyone who had been involved in their extinction. They had somehow identified individual Zorathian ships and personnel from across the vast empire and were systematically eliminating them. How is that possible? Their entire civilization was destroyed. We're not certain, sir, but intelligence suggests they had hidden installations throughout their solar system that we missed. Underground facilities, asteroid bases, research stations disguised as space debris. While we were bombarding their cities, they were preparing for war. The attacks continued for weeks. Every installation that had played a role in humanity's destruction found itself visited by ghosts that turned dreams into nightmares and reality into horror. The humans seemed to know everything about their targets: personal histories, tactical weaknesses, psychological vulnerabilities. War leader Vorthak himself became a target when his flagship simply vanished during routine patrol. It was found 3 days later, drifting empty except for a single message burned into the bridge. This is for the children you murdered while we watched. Vorthak was discovered in his private quarters, alive but broken. He spoke only once before retreating into catatonic silence. They made me watch it all again. Every death, every scream. But this time I was the one dying. The Empire's leadership began to understand that they faced something unprecedented. The humans hadn't just survived their extermination. They had used it as fuel for their own transformation. Every child killed, every colony destroyed, every dream shattered had been converted into weapons of unprecedented cruelty. Emperor Zorathak himself called an emergency session of the High Council. In the crystal spires of Zorathia Prime, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered to discuss a threat they had thought eliminated. How many humans could possibly remain? The Emperor asked his advisors. Conservative estimates suggest fewer than 1 billion survivors, replied the intelligence minister. But they appear to have capabilities far beyond what their numbers would suggest. Then we finish what we started. Send the Grand Fleet to Earth and destroy every last human. The defense minister shifted uncomfortably. Your Majesty, our analysts believe that may not be advisa. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zorathian Empire, which had maintained order for 2 millennia, through superior technology and overwhelming force, found itself fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare. Humans didn't mass their fleets for grand battles or attempt to hold territory. Instead, they appeared wherever they were least expected, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Corthex stood in the command center of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Order, studying reports that made no tactical sense. In the past 6 months, humanity had destroyed over 300 Imperial installations, while losing only a handful of their own vessels. The numbers were impossible. A broken species with primitive technology should not be able to challenge an empire that spanned half the galaxy. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we've lost contact with the mining consortium on Veltar Prime. Last transmission indicated they were under attack by unknown forces. Corthex didn't need to ask what unknown forces meant anymore. It always meant humans. How many defenders were stationed there? 50,000 Imperial Guards, sir, plus automated defense systems and orbital platforms. Within hours, they received the inevitable report. Veltar Prime's mining operation had been completely destroyed. Its 50,000 defenders either dead or driven insane. The humans had somehow infiltrated the planet's communication network and broadcasted psychological warfare programs that turned the defenders' own entertainment systems into weapons of mass terror. But this attack was different. Instead of simply destroying the facility, the humans had left it partially operational. They had converted the mining equipment into a massive transmitter that now broadcast a signal across the sector. The message was simple but devastating. Detailed recordings of the Earth bombardment, shown from the perspective of dying human children. Every Zorathian world within 50 light-years received the transmission. Billions of Imperial citizens watched human children call for their parents as alien weapons destroyed their homes. They saw Governor Park die defending schoolchildren. They witnessed the systematic execution of prisoners who had committed no crime, except dreaming of the stars. The psychological impact was immediate. Zorathian civilians who had been told the human problem was solved quickly and humanely learned the truth about their empire's methods. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Some Zorathian colonies actually declared independence rather than remain part of an empire that murdered children. How did they get those recordings? Emperor Zorathak demanded when his intelligence chief briefed him on the crisis. We believe they had surveillance equipment on their colony worlds that we failed to detect during the initial sweep. The minister replied. Worse, they seem to have complete records of our military communications during the extermination. They know exactly who gave which orders, who participated in the executions, and who watched it happen. The emperor's rage filled the throne room like a living thing. Then we hunt down every human and finish this properly. Send word to all fleet commanders. Total extermination protocols are now authorized for any human presence. But the humans had anticipated this response. When the Imperial fleet moved against Earth, they found the planet defended by weapons that shouldn't have existed. Entire battle groups simply disappeared. Their crews experiencing nightmares so intense that their minds shut down rather than process what they were seeing. Captain Sarah Chen had become something her younger self wouldn't have recognized. Standing on the bridge of the human stealth ship, Retribution, she watched Zorathian vessels tear themselves apart as their crews turned their weapons on each other, driven mad by fear viruses that turned every shadow into a monster. Target the command ship, she ordered her weapons officer. Make sure we leave survivors this time. The attack was surgical and terrifying. Human boarding pods invisible to Zorathian sensors, attached to the Imperial flagship like parasites. Within minutes, the ship's entire command structure was either dead or insane, leaving only junior officers to tell the tale. But Sarah's true masterpiece wasn't the military defeat. It was what her psychological warfare team did to the survivors. Using technology that manipulated memory and perception, they implanted experiences in the Zorathian officers' minds. Each survivor would remember with perfect clarity, watching their own families die the way human families had died. They would wake up screaming about children who never existed, mourning losses that were fabricated but felt completely real. When the survivors returned to Imperial space, they carried with them a psychological plague. The artificial memories were contagious, spreading through Zorathian neural networks like a virus. Entire worlds began experiencing collective nightmares about human children dying in alien flames. Dr. Marcus Webb had perfected the ultimate weapon, guilt. The Zorathians, who had committed genocide without remorse, now found themselves unable to escape the emotional weight of their actions. Their own memories had been turned against them, forcing them to experience the consequences of their cruelty from the perspective of their victims. The Empire's response grew increasingly desperate. They deployed planet-killer weapons against suspected human bases, only to discover the bases were decoys filled with mirror systems that reflected the weapons back at Imperial worlds. They tried to negotiate offering reparations and territory, only to receive recordings of their own leaders ordering the execution of human children. War leader Vorthak, released from medical treatment, but forever changed by his encounter with human psychological weapons, found himself assigned to hunt down the rebels. But every battle only proved how thoroughly the humans had evolved beyond their former selves. They're not the same species, he reported to the High Command after yet another devastating defeat. The beings we're fighting now, they're something we created. Every atrocity we committed, every child we killed, every dream we destroyed, they've turned it all into weapons. The humans had learned to weaponize their own trauma. Ships that had once carried families to new worlds now carried viruses that turned pleasure into pain. Scientists who had studied alien flowers now designed toxins that could rewrite Zorathian DNA. Children who had played in integrated schools were now soldiers who could infiltrate Imperial worlds and disappear entire populations. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of humanity's transformation was their patience. They didn't fight to win quickly. They fought to ensure their enemies would never forget the cost of harming human children. On the agricultural world of Frelnox, home to 60 million Zorathian farmers, the humans demonstrated their new philosophy of warfare. Instead of destroying the world, they contaminated it with nanomachines that turned the planet's crops into sources of constant, low-level hallucinations. Every meal became a reminder of human suffering. Every bite of food carried the taste of ash and sorrow. The population couldn't evacuate because the nanomachines bonded with Zorathian biology, making them carriers who would spread the effect to any world they visited. Frelnox became a planet of permanent mourning, where 60 million people spent their days experiencing random fragments of human memories. A child's laugh that would never be heard again, a parent's final words, the last sunset seen by someone who had believed in tomorrow. Emperor Zorathak called for total war, authorizing the use of weapons banned even by imperial standards. Reality bombs that could unmake entire star systems. Time weapons that could erase their targets from history itself. Consciousness killers that could sterilize every thinking being in a solar system. But the humans had prepared for this too. When the Imperial superweapons deployed, they found their targets protected by technologies that bent space and time in impossible ways. Human scientists had apparently learned to hide entire worlds in pocket dimensions, making them unreachable by conventional weapons. Worse, the humans began targeting the Empire's civilian populations with weapons designed to cause maximum psychological damage, while leaving infrastructure intact. They wanted Zorathian civilization to survive so it could remember what happened to species that murdered human children. The tipping point came when the humans infiltrated Zorathia Prime itself. The Empire's capital world, protected by layers of shields and defended by the greatest fleet in galactic history, simply woke up one morning to find that every computer system, every communication network, every piece of technology on the planet was showing the same image. Human children playing in gardens that no longer existed. The Emperor himself was found in his throne room, catatonic, his mind trapped in an endless loop of watching Emma Chen and thousands of other children die while Sarah Chen's voice whispered in his head, "You did this. You ordered this. You thought it would teach us order. Did we learn the lesson correctly?" The Empire's military command structure collapsed as every leader who had participated in the human extermination found themselves psychologically unable to function. Some committed suicide rather than face another day of artificial memories that felt more real than their actual lives. Others retreated into madness, convinced they were human children being hunted by. 3 years after the massacre of Earth's colonies, the Zorathian Empire was dying. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the human flagship Final Lesson, watching the last Imperial fleet gather around Zorathia Prime. 50,000 ships, the remainder of a force that had once numbered in the millions, formed desperate defensive formations around their homeworld. They knew they couldn't win. They were simply hoping to die with some dignity intact. Sarah's reflection in the reinforced glass showed someone who had been transformed by war into something that barely resembled the diplomatic captain who had first met the Zorathians. Half her face was scarred by energy weapons, and cybernetic implants glowed beneath her skin. Her eyes, once warm with hope for peaceful contact between species, now held the cold light of someone who had learned that mercy was a luxury the galaxy couldn't afford. "All fleets report ready," announced Commander Torres from the bridge. The young officer had been a child during first contact, had grown up dreaming of alien friends and interstellar adventures. Now she coordinated the destruction of civilizations with the efficiency of a machine. Around Zorathia Prime, the human fleet materialized out of stealth. 2,000 ships, each one built from the wreckage of humanity's innocence and powered by the focused rage of a species that had learned the true nature of the universe. They looked nothing like the vessels Earth had launched to the stars. With such hope, these were weapons designed by beings who had abandoned every belief they once held about the possibility of peace. Emperor Zorathak's final transmission reached every ship in both fleets. People of the galaxy, witness what becomes of those who bring chaos to the ordered universe. The humans have revealed their true nature. They are destroyers who know only vengeance and hatred. When they are done with us, they will turn their weapons on you. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice carrying to millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "Emperor Zorathak speaks of chaos and order. Let me tell you what we learned about your order. The transmission switched to recordings from the human colonies, children laughing in alien gardens, families building homes under foreign stars, scientists sharing discoveries with beings from across the galaxy, images of hope and cooperation, of species learning to work together despite their differences. This was your chaos, Sarah continued. Children playing with alien friends, parents raising families on worlds where no human had ever set foot, scientists discovering wonders that could benefit every species in the galaxy. This is what you called a threat to order. The images changed to show the Zorathian bombardment, human cities burning, families dying, children crying for parents who would never answer. Governor Park's final words, Emma Chen's last smile. And this, Sarah's voice grew cold as space itself, was your solution. You murdered our children because they dared to dream of a galaxy where different species could coexist. You called it maintaining order. We call it unforgivable. The human fleet didn't attack immediately. Instead, they demonstrated the weapons they had spent 3 years perfecting. Zorathian ships simply stopped functioning as their computer systems became infected with viruses that turned every display into a window into human suffering. Crews collapsed as psychological weapons forced them to experience the death of every human child, to feel the grief of every human parent, to understand the weight of genocide from the perspective of its victims. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. The Empire's final fleet didn't explode in glorious combat. It simply shut down ship by ship, as its crews found themselves unable to function under the weight of artificially imposed guilt and trauma. Some vessels drifted empty, their crews having retreated so far into their own minds that they could no longer interact with reality. Others transmitted surrender signals over and over, their crews begging for forgiveness that would never come. When the last Imperial ship had fallen silent, Sarah Chen ordered the final phase of humanity's revenge. The human ships didn't bombard Zorathia Prime from orbit. Instead, they landed troops who moved through the Empire's capital like ghosts, seeking out specific targets. Every Zorathian who had participated in the planning, authorization, or execution of the human extinction was captured alive. Every official who had watched the executions, every officer who had followed orders, every citizen who had celebrated the solution to the human problem, they were brought to the vast plaza where the Empire's greatest monuments stood. Statues of conquest, temples to order, museums celebrating 2,000 years of imperial supremacy. In the shadow of these symbols, the humans set up their final demonstration. Dr. Marcus Webb, his appearance even more extensively modified than Sarah's, had prepared his masterpiece. The memory extraction and implantation technology he had developed during the war was now sophisticated enough to transfer complete experiences between minds. Every Zorathian who had participated in humanity's destruction would spend the rest of their lives experiencing random moments from the lives of their victims. Emperor Zorathak himself was the first subject. As billions watched through hijacked broadcasting networks, the being who had ordered the death of human children found himself reliving Emma Chen's last day on New Terra. He experienced her joy at making alien friends, her excitement about the integrated school, her trust in a universe that seemed full of possibility. Then he felt her confusion and terror as the bombs began to fall, her desperate calls for a mother who would never come, her final moments wondering why the aliens she had trusted were trying to kill her. But the humans didn't stop with one memory. Zorathak experienced the deaths of thousands of human children, felt the grief of countless parents, lived through the final moments of every person who had died believing in a better future among the stars. The process took hours, and every second was broadcast to ensure the galaxy would never forget. When it was over, Zorathak was left alive but forever changed. He would spend the rest of his existence carrying the memories of his victims, experiencing their pain as if it were his own, unable to escape the weight of what he had done. The same process was repeated with every Zorathian who had played a role in the extinction. War leader Vorthak, who had personally overseen the colony bombardments, found himself reliving the deaths of every family he had murdered. Intelligence officers experienced the terror of children hiding from bombs that would find them anyway. Even low-level bureaucrats who had processed the paperwork for genocide were given memories of the people their forms had condemned to death. But Sarah's plan went beyond individual punishment. The humans had spent 3 years infiltrating every aspect of Zorathian society, and now they activated programs that would ensure the Empire's crimes were never forgotten. Every computer on every world in former Imperial space now contained complete records of the human extinction, accessible to anyone who looked. History books were rewritten to include detailed accounts of what had been done to human children. Children's stories were modified to include tales of the consequences of murdering innocents. Most devastating of all, the humans had introduced genetic modifications into the Zorathian population that would ensure the memories of their crimes were passed down through generations. Every Zorathian child born from that day forward would carry genetic memories of human suffering, would dream of alien children dying and wake up understanding that their species had chosen to destroy rather than coexist. As the human fleet prepared to depart Zorathia Prime, Sarah stood once more in the observation deck, looking down at the capital of a broken empire. The planet still functioned, its cities still stood, its people still lived, but the Zorathian Empire as a force in galactic politics was finished. No species would ever again trust a civilization that had murdered children to maintain order. No world would join an empire whose foundational act had been genocide against beings whose only crime was hoping for a better future. "What's our next target?" asked Commander Torres as she joined Sarah at the window. "There isn't one," Sarah replied, her voice carrying a weariness that went beyond mere physical exhaustion. "The Empire is broken. The galaxy knows what happens to species that harm human children. Our work here is done." But Torres wasn't satisfied with that answer. "The galaxy is in chaos now. Without the Empire to maintain order, there will be wars, conflicts, species fighting for territory and resources. Don't we have a responsibility to step in?" Sarah turned to look at the young officer, and for a moment, her expression softened enough to show a hint of the woman she had been before the universe taught her that peace was an illusion. "Our responsibility was to our children, and we failed them. We let them trust in a galaxy that saw their innocence as a threat to order. We won't make that mistake again." She gestured toward the tactical displays showing human ships throughout the galaxy. Not conquering or controlling, but watching. Always watching. From now on, humanity will do what we should have done from the beginning. We'll make sure that no species ever again believes they can harm human children without consequences. Not because we want to rule the galaxy, but because we've learned that the universe only understands one language. Torres followed her gaze to the display, seeing the pattern of human deployment across.